Oh my, where to begin?
At the beginning.
At the beginning. It's a good idea. So I'm going to start that. I'm going to start with your wife. Can I pick on her?
Absolutely.
You said no. I hope you listen to the readings today, what Sharon and Ron were reading, because there is such a dichotomy, and it's done purposely, to get us to think and get us to pray and get us to act. Second week of Advent is a slap up the side of the head. Sharon read the poetry of Isaiah beautifully in that first reading. The one, the anointed one to come that Israel prayed for, a prince, a man of the Spirit, God-fearing, won't judge by bribery, but will actually judge righteously, a person who stands opposed to evil, who will bring peace on earth, and all of creation, even the animal kingdom, will be reconciled. There will no longer be a distinction between predator and prey. And Ron read the second reading, Paul's letter to the Romans, the only Christian community he never founded, so he didn't know these people. But he reminds them, we are people who not only seek hope, but we should be abounding in hope through the power of the Spirit. We're empowered to accept each other the way Christ accepted us, to be a community of unity and harmony, and it can happen. And then we get to the gospel, and you hear about John the Baptist. Oh my. Is it not true, Vincent, Sharon, Matt, any other, Stephen? All right, in the course of questioning anyone, you never ask a question unless you're prepared for the answer and you think you know it. Isn't that sort of the cardinal rule in your work? It's supposedly, but that's what you hope for. Forget about what you see on Law and Order. That's not real. They're real, okay? Well, let me tell you about a young priest who made the mistake of asking a Sunday school class once what they knew about John the Baptist on the second Sunday of Advent, because that's what the kids are doing right now. That's what we're reflecting on, this very interesting person. And I was ready to hear the truth, and I heard the truth. I was reminded that this was a guy who basically lived in the desert, ate bugs, and yelled at people. And that's not totally inaccurate. John is not the person you want walking into this church right now, past Claudia, down the center aisle, telling Mary Beth, move over, I'm going to sit next to you. He is confrontational. He can be frightening, and he is a voice that 21st century America, matter of fact, all of 21st century, all of us need to hear. It had been 400 years, put it in context, way longer than there's been a USA. 400 years since anyone outside the religious establishment spoke as a religious leader, especially in a confrontational mode. The word we use is prophet. No prophets. And then that voice all of a sudden is heard again, and it is loud. And he is not afraid to denounce what he perceives as evil, no matter who gets offended by it. So if the king entices his brother's wife to leave him and leave his brother and marry him, he calls him out for it publicly. It's going to cost him his life eventually. If the leaders of holy religion, this particular sect of Pharisees and Sadducees, if they're more into their worship and rituals and less into acts of justice and charity, he names that. Makes him really popular. Okay? The old King James Version, by the way, I was looking at it this morning. What you have in front of you is sort of a toned-down version. The King James, which is not always the most accurate, but it's always the most poetic and powerful in its language. John speaks to the Pharisees and Sadducees. He doesn't call them a brood of vipers. He looks them in the eye, and the translation was, you generation of vipers. Okay? Makes it very personal to get them to think about who they are. And it's not so much that he intends to be abrasive or offensive. He's just not afraid to speak the truth. My first Christmas gift for all of you, may you have someone in your life who's not afraid to speak the truth. Your life, your soul may depend on it. And never be afraid to speak the truth. The world needs truth speakers. And that's part of what being a Christian is. And if you're terrified to speak the truth, what purpose do you have? You're going to be afraid all your life. But John is more than a truth speaker. John is a person that points to Christ. And this is the second part of the sermon. The other half I want you to remember. He summons people, open your eyes, amend your ways, change your hearts. He doesn't just condemn people for what they're doing. Anyone can do that. All you need is a social media account. What he does is he reminds them of what they're called to be. And that's what he does for us. He points the way to Christ and says, look, you have to open up the access road into your own person. your heart and soul. And he uses an image that was very popular. In the Episcopal Church in the olden days, when you had large congregations and the bishop came and it was a big thing, this church, bishop's no big deal, we have a bishop every year, who cares, right? But when the bishop comes, two things were guaranteed to happen. Number one, anyone in the parish who knew how to cook well, they were the only ones who were allowed to do the coffee hour that day. And number two, the altar guild went crazy and polished everything. If it was silver, it got polished. If it was brass, it got polished. If it was plastic, it got polished. Everything got polished. You make things beautiful for the authority figure to come in. Well, John taps into that imagery because in the ancient world, in these small outposts, if somebody of importance, king, governor, whatever, comes in, you want the road to be smooth. Think of the dirt roads that are up here, that lovable road that you guys live on, okay? Schoolhouse Road that I have discovered is the shortcut getting from the rectory to here. Any of you ever been on Schoolhouse Road? Mm-hmm. That's where you should be schooled as to learn how to drive, okay, with a tank, okay? But what they would do is they would fix the roads so that the authority figure comes and has a perfect access road into town. The point that John kind of taps into, he says, look, you got to prepare a highway for your God, for yourself, so that the grace of God, the power of God, the love of God gets into you, so that you can be the person who looks and speaks and thinks and acts as a believer, so that you can touch the lives of others. And in the process, as he's telling the truth, and as he's pointing to Christ and saying you've got to really walk with him, make him the destination, don't listen to me, let his story be your story. And if you truly do that, then you don't have to worry about all the other harsh stuff. But he's saying ultimately everyone who dares to call herself or himself a believer in Jesus Christ has got to make a decision. Either it's serious or it's not. You can't be neutral. You can't go by what you feel for the day. Where is your commitment? Where is your heart? What really matters? And it's serious. So I don't often do this, but I'm going to use I'm going to use his words. I want you to think. I'm not yelling, but I want you to hear it. Because the decision you make has eternal consequences. We've all been baptized in the Spirit. Everyone is baptized. Our little beloved Christopher is going to be baptized, and now, what is it, about 5 weeks? Just about, okay? We are the ones called, baptized in the Holy Spirit and fire. John's parting lines, he will baptize you in the Holy Spirit and fire. His winnowing fork is in his hand. He is going to clear the threshing floor. He will gather wheat into his granary, and the chaff he will burn. Boys and girls, who are you? Are we wheat or are we chaff? Amen.
Amen.